Hello, everyone. This is Brian Tonsoni live from Delphi, Indiana, at the basement of my house. New podcast studio had some technical difficulties earlier, so I moved to the television portion of my room and the hats in the background. I'm a teacher at Delphi High School. We have a school club of Delphi bracketologists. We have 5 students, 4 teachers, 6 students, and 4 teachers that try to put together the NCAA bracket. We've been talking hoops now for over a month. I'm joined here by junior Daniel Jakes. Hello, Daniel.
Hey,
How are you doing this evening?
good. How are you?
Very good. We'd like to welcome any listeners. If you have questions, type in /Q over here in the chat down to your right, and it will pop up as a question. Feel free to make comments, positive only, over on the right in the chat as we discuss our brackets that we put out every Sunday night and update it Monday. So let's get started, Daniel, on the questions for today. Let's share with our listeners and our viewers the number 1 seeds. Number 1 overall is Kansas. The second number 1 seed is Villanova. The third number 1 seed is Oklahoma, and the fourth number 1 seed is Virginia. And order does matter because 1 plays 4 and 2 plays 3. I've seen a lot of other places have Virginia as the overall number 1, and I think I'm going to be in play for 2 or 3 weeks. Virginia moves in. Other teams like Oregon and Iowa have had some losses in the last couple of weeks. UNC is also another team that is on our 2 line. And we have Michigan State moving up to also a 2 line. So those are our number 1 seeds as of right now. So the first question that we have scheduled tonight, Daniel, I'll let you start, is top seeds. Are there any teams that you see are locks for number 1 seeds, meaning they lose a game or 2 or losing their tourney early, they'll still be a number 1? Of any of those 4 number 1 seeds, do you see any locks?
I think the first 3 are pretty locked in. Villanova, Kansas, and Oklahoma. That last 1 seed has kind of been up in the air all year. I don't think really there's a solid line between the top 4 tier number 1s. Those first 3 are in really a class of their own, I think. You could maybe make an argument for Xavier to be in that 4 seed or that last 1 seed. But I think really Oklahoma, Kansas, and Villanova are really in a class of their own.
You know, I think so too. Some people have knocked Oklahoma out. They lost a couple in a row. They went on the road and beat a really solid top 10 West Virginia team. I just think with Buddy Hield and the way they're playing, I think they're a top 4 seed. I think if any of those 3 that you mentioned might fall to number 2, it would be Oklahoma. And according to some other bracketologists, they do have Oklahoma at the 2 seed, and they have Xavier moved up. So I think, Daniel, you're spot on. If anyone moves up right now, it'll be Xavier. And I think Villanova and Xavier play this week. So I think that's the game for an Xavier to win to move up. I don't know that if Villanova loses that game, they're out of a number 1 seed, and thus that's why I think that they're kind of locked in. What teams do you think may get in there for the 4th seed, Daniel, that aren't currently not number 1 seeds?
I think Michigan State, if they could make a late push, maybe even win their conference tourney, they could make that jump to the 1 seed. Oregon, they have the number 1 overall strength of schedule. I think they could make an argument. They have 9 wins against the top 50.
Don't they have a high RPI too? They're in the top 4 RPI as well, correct?
Yeah, they're 4th.
Yeah, they're 4th. So, you know, I think the Pac-12 is somewhat questioned, but you know, I think they have what you said, 9 wins and a high RPI. So yeah, I can see that. Anybody else?
I think other than Xavier, I think those 2 are really. I don't think North Carolina is going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of been up and down this year. Those 3 teams I mentioned are really the only teams I can see making that jump.
Do you see the winner of the ACC maybe getting it? Right now we have Virginia, but if North Carolina, Duke wins out, I don't think Duke will jump all the way from a 3 or a 4 seed up to the number 1. But I think, what if North Carolina wins out and wins the ACC tournament? Do you think then that North Carolina might be able to get that 1 seed?
I think you can make the argument for them, but I honestly don't think that they will. They play Virginia later this week. I don't think that they're gonna win out. I have a hard time finding them winning out. I can see them making it far in their conference tournament, but I just don't think they have enough to get that one seed.
Yeah, I think I think you're right, and I don't know that they have all the criteria when you look at RPI and you look at top 50 wins that some of these other teams do. How about this for a number one seed, Michigan State? Any chance that they run the table? I know you don't want that to happen because I think they play your Buckeyes here coming up, right? But if they would run the table and go win the Big Ten tournament, can they move from a 3 or a 2 where we find them in most brackets? Can they move up to a 1 seed?
I think they could, yeah.
And be fifth in the Big Ten.
Yeah, they play Ohio State twice. They play Rutgers, which hasn't had a win in the Big Ten yet. I mean, I can see that being a very good possibility. Some maybe question their strength of schedule, but I think they've got enough quality wins to make that jump to the lead.
Yeah, I think any of those twos might have a chance, but we're down to 2 weeks, folks, of the regular season and then the conference tourney. So 3 weeks till Selection Sunday, 3 weeks yesterday until Selection Sunday. And I think you got to win out right now if you're a 2 or a 3 and want to have a chance to move into the top seed. If you're a top seed that we have locked in, you can afford a loss here or there, and it'll be interesting to see. But nonetheless, the 1s and the 2s are pretty solid teams. Question number 2 on our agenda tonight is we're going to share with our viewers what is more important personally. And we look at a lot of criteria to make these judgments. But, Daniel, when we're looking at 2 teams and they're relatively close, or, like we did the other day, we had three sets of 3 teams that we were looking at. Top 50 wins, bad losses, strength of schedule, RPI. Share with the viewers how you try to make a decision based on all of that criteria to determine who is the higher team head-to-head.
First off, I try to look at the top 50 wins and try to compare how many chances they had versus how many wins each one of those teams has. And then I like to look at the strength of the schedule to see if they actually are trying to play teams with tourney aspirations. I don't really look at the RPI so much. Those strength of schedule and top 50 wins, and then maybe bad losses as a third criteria. But those two qualities that I first mentioned are really the things that I look at.
Yeah, I have I look at RPI maybe as a tiebreaker down the stretch if everything is the same. But top 50 wins, and here's the thing that I'm going to be doing too, when it gets down to these tough brackets, to not just look at the number of wins, but actually who did they win. And I know the team pages that the NCAA tournament committee gets in their selection time, they actually they get top 25 information too. So there's a difference between a top 50 wins. You beat 3 teams and they're top 25, or do you beat 3 teams and they're 40 to 45? I think one team stands out. So I will be looking a little bit more at who they play at times, as well as the raw numbers. But I think it is who do you beat? And then I also maybe will add road victories. I'll kind of look in at the road to see if you can win on the road. But it's not as easy as people see. And I have to laugh at Joe Lenardi and all of my buddies that I follow and how much crap they get when they don't have a particular school ranked as high as the fans would want them to, or the fans think the NCAA committee makes some magical matchup. And when you do what we do for 4 or 5 weeks, you realize that it's not really easy. There can be, in our group, there's several times disagreement on who should be where. So I think all of that is important. And obviously we want to just make the NCAA and us fans want to have the best tournament. Okay, we're moving on to question number 3 for tonight. And question number 3 is the Atlantic 10 and American Conference teams. We have 2 conferences here with some very good basketball, but they find these teams are somewhere. They have a couple teams that are high, good seeds maybe. Dayton is falling. but you have about 4 or 5 teams that are all kind of in that middle range. Let me read some teams. The A10 has Dayton, VCU, St. Joseph, St. Bonaventure, and George Washington that all have a case to be in the tournament. Dayton has been anywhere from a 4 to a 7 seed. They're pretty much a lock to be in, I would imagine. The others, VCU, St. Joe, St. Bonaventure, George Washington, are all fighting to get in the tournament. The American Conference, Connecticut, Temple, Cincinnati, Tulsa, one of them is going to win the tournament. The other 3 are fighting to be in, and depending on who you follow. But right there, that's 9 teams. 9 teams between 2 conferences that aren't considered the Big 12, the Pac-12, the SEC, the ACC, Big 10 worthy. But there's some good basketball there, and I would like to see some of these teams get in. I think you're going to see maybe at least 5 of these 9 teams get in, but deciding between these teams is really tough. So of these A10 teams and American Conference teams, who do you think's better than the others?
I personally like Dayton and VCU. VCU has kind of made headlines to get into the tourney the past couple years and making these magical runs towards the latter part of the season. Dayton, they've been known to make a couple runs here and there. Jordan Seibert last year went off. Mm-hmm. I like those 2 teams. Cincinnati from the American, I like those. I like them. I forget who it was. I was comparing Cincinnati and Temple earlier. Mm-hmm. Temple, I think they would get the nod though over Cincy. They just have a better strength of schedule. They have a couple more quality wins against the top 50 than Cincinnati. It's so hard to compare these 9 teams mm-hmm. because their resumes are so close and so similar. It makes it hard.
I agree. And that's why I thought I'd throw this question out, because for our viewers, you're looking at 9 teams that we like. Here's the other thing that I found too is I'm a little bit pro VCU because of what VCU has done over the years. You've seen them on TV. They've made a magical run. You like the way they played under Shaka Smart, who's one of my favorite coaches. So there's some bias in there as a new bracketologist where it's a name recognition. When you look at VCU versus a St. Bonaventure or a George Washington, VCU just sounds like a better team. And I wonder how much that plays in my mind when I look at the resumes of those 2. I think St. Bonaventure, we have in the first 4 out, I believe. Or do we? Yeah, we have the first 4 out. Here's another example of bias too. I had when you don't do this as a professional, like the writers and our Andy Bottom from Assembly Call, I'm kind of sponsoring. He's got the shirt here of my buddies at Assembly Call. Great sweatshirt, by the way. They do this professionally. They take a lot of time to dig deep into the resume. We do a good job. We spend a lot of time on it. You don't study history in my class. You study brackets. That's okay. But Tulsa snuck up on me. I wasn't aware of them having a decent year, and then all of a sudden I'll see mention of Tulsa being on the bubble, and then you go look at them and you look at their resume, and I think they're sneaking in there with Cincinnati and Temple. And so I think what's interesting for our viewers is sometimes you get that bracket on Selection Sunday and you see some of these teams at 7, 8, 9, and you kind of wonder where they're at or who's in the, who gets left out, or is St. Bonaventure in a play-in game? Who is that? But these teams have some decent wins on their resume, and they're all similar. And I just don't think all nine of these are going to get in.
I think the one thing that sticks out between those 9 teams is that George Washington beat Virginia earlier in the year. That win's looking really nice right about now. They're being considered for a 1 seed. Mm-hmm. They're ranked number 3 in the AP poll. Tulsa, the only thing that I have a problem with is their strength of schedule and their wins against the top 50. They're 3-5 against the top 50. With
Daniel, I may have lost you there. You're back.
Yeah, you were frozen too.
Okay.
But the only problem I have with them is just their wins against the top 50 and their strength of schedule. I mean, their strength of schedule isn't terrible. It's 43, but just they don't have a bunch of wins against the top 50 as some of these other teams do.
Yeah, Temple and Cincinnati aren't getting a lot of love in some of the brackets in the 10-11 range or maybe even the out range. Tulsa is in there too. You'll see St. Joseph's has won a few games recently. Their resume is not great. And then there's some discussion on whether VCU, unless they win the conference tournament, gets in. But I think you'll see 3 A10 teams and at least 2 or 3 American teams. 6 of these 9 will probably get in of some sort. And like you said, Dayton has played well in the tournament. VCU has played well in the tournament. UConn has made a run in the past, I think, from a 7 seed, right, to a championship or into the championship game. So I think these are teams that people need to watch. All right, question number 4 today. Let's talk Big Ten teams and seeding. Any thoughts about how our Big Ten teams are seeded? Teams you like, teams that you don't like in the seeding from the Big Ten?
Wisconsin, they're white hot. And with the strength of schedule of 8, I believe. They're red hot. I think they lost to
Michigan State.
Empty on who they lost to. Michigan State, yeah. They lost at Michigan State, I believe. And they're being considered for, which, I mean, and it isn't a terrible loss. It would have really built their resume even more, but they're coming in red hot. Michigan State, Maryland, they lost to Minnesota, which gave them their first Big Ten win this season. Recently, and they just barely beat Michigan.
Yeah, we had two big teams. Iowa lost at Penn State, and Maryland lost at Minnesota. And you saw those teams drop from a high 1 seeds, 3 seeds, down to a 3 and a 4. So the Big Ten took a little hit there, but Michigan State is moving up. We moved them up to a number 2. What about Indiana and Purdue?
That game, I mean, it would have looked Purdue IU. But it definitely keeps IU up top of the Big Ten, which really helps. Right now they play the 8 now Purdue and Nebraska if the tourney started the conference tournament. I think that's a really good spot for IU. They play fast. When their defense creates offense, that's when they're at their best. And sometimes I think they get a little ahead of themselves.
Yeah, I actually had Indiana as a 6 and Purdue as a 6, and then sometimes what you have to do is you have to move teams up or down. Texas was going to match up against a Big 12 team, and honestly, I didn't do it biasly because I'm an IU guy, but I moved Indiana was the top number 6 seed, and so Texas moved down for matchup purposes. So I really have both those teams kind of there. Michigan is the team that I think is in jeopardy of not being in the tournament. I think they lost, and we have them as a playing game, but they looked like a tournament team the other day. And then you got to answer, St. Bonaventure or Michigan. But Michigan needs to get a couple wins here or win in the tournament to make sure that they can get in.
Yeah, I would agree. They didn't look too impressive against Ohio State last week. If they continue to play like they did against Maryland, I think they'll find.
And I'll tell you what, and I know you don't think so, but 2 or 3 wins from your Ohio State Buckeyes, and they're going to have a chance to get in there in the 9, 10, 11 range. They're 18 and 10. They have 2 games against Michigan State. I know that might be a long shot, but you know what? You played a game, and if they come out and they win one of those, or if they win 2 out of their last 3 and win 1 game in the tournament, they are going to get some consideration on Selection Sunday.
Well, right now they have Michigan State at home on Wednesday. They have Iowa at home. And then they travel to East Lansing to play. And then right now they're the 4 seed in the Big Ten tourney, which that would match up against either Michigan State or the winner of the 12-13 game, which is Minnesota and Rutgers. And, I mean, if they can maybe even beat Michigan 2 out of 3 times, that looks great. And, I mean,
I know you are.
I'm pulling for them.
And we thought it is a long shot, but we thought they were dead 3 weeks ago. And then all of a sudden you look, you have teams that are 16 and 12, 15 and 11 getting consideration, and you have a Big Ten team who is 4th right now at 18 and 10. I think they deserve to be considered, and yes, they have a tough route, but you got to play the games. And so we might be able to get another Big Ten team in the tourney. All right, let's talk bubble for the week. What are your thoughts? The bubble for our viewers, those are those teams that are barely in, the last 6 or 7 teams in, and the first 6 or 7 teams that are out. Daniel, what do you think about our bubble as it is right now?
I think Seton Hall got away with one Saturday.
Yeah, they did.
At St. They were down 2 with a couple, and they had free throws on a kind of bad call, I should say. But I think that would have dropped them out of the bubble. St. John's hasn't won a game in the Big. They're not looking like they're gonna get this year under Chris Mullen's first year. It's just I think the bubble is not what it used to be. Alabama may be one of the better teams on the bubble. They're 5-5 against the top 50. Their strength of schedule is 25. I think right now they're probably the top bubble.
You know, the bubble's somewhat soft. I mean, you got a lot of double-digit loss teams on the bubble, and it's going to be hard to decide down the stretch. But, you know, you got teams like Ohio State, UCLA, who are 2 or 3 wins away from making a push late. And there's some solid teams out there. I don't mean solid, but just some teams you kind of like. Butler has a chance, needs to win a couple games. We'd like to see Butler get back in from the state of Indiana. And then there's some teams that are in the tournament are 11, Seton Hall, Alabama, Michigan, Tulsa, who are just hanging on, Temple hanging on to that bid. And then if there's any upsets in the conference tournament, that takes an at-large bid away potentially from, you know, like a Monmouth gets beat. And so the bubble is here. And here's the thing. Teams better start winning. There's only 3 or 4 games left in the regular season. And they don't have time for losses. And they don't have time for bad losses. And that's why, like, Seton Hall barely pulling that out. That might have been a death blow. Or Wisconsin was down big to Illinois. If Wisconsin would have lost that, they could have found themselves further down the bubble. So it is real, and it is time for these teams to make a thing. What are you going to look for this week? Last question. What do you look for this week as either teams or games that you're watching?
Well, first off, your screen's black. I can't see.
As long as you can hear me, we'll finish this boy out today.
Okay. But a couple in that is Arizona at Colorado. Arizona's coming in ranked 9th. Colorado's in our tourney at a 9 seed. That could be a really big win for Colorado. They always seem to kind of pull out some magic at Boulder. That could be maybe a conference tourney starter to push them deeper into that tourney. Another game Wednesday, we mentioned it earlier, Villanova at Xavier. That could be a great win for Villanova to really make their mark, to really become that number 1 overall seed. And North Carolina against Virginia. That could be a big game for North Carolina and making that to push them into that 1 line. But I can see that, well, keeping them at that last 1 seed, that could be in that head-to-head.
Yeah, I'm looking at the back end of the Pac-12, what Colorado can do. California has moved into a place where I feel they're safe. Oregon State, what are they doing? And I'm looking at that A-10 and American Conference, you know, St. Bonaventure, George Washington. I'd really be liking to see what that is. And then conference tournaments start up soon in the next week or 2, and I'll be looking forward to seeing how some of these teams do that are on the bubble. And then all the other teams that are locks, your IU, Purdue, who we think are locks for the tournament, they're fighting for seeding, and every big win solidifies their seed or maybe moves them up. A loss might move them down 1 line. And it really matters where we put them 1 through 68 on where they go to play, who they go and play. Right now, we have Indiana as a 5 playing Valpo 12, and you move 1 line up or down, and that can move you to a different place with a different opponent. So we are meeting tomorrow at Buffalo Wild Wings to talk a little bit more and just to celebrate a solid group of young men. We are also announcing that we are going to do a women's bracketology. We have some of our ladies in school who are interested in the women's tournament. So be looking for a bracketology for the women's bracket to come out, and possibly a show on the women's basketball tournament as well. I appreciate Daniel and his time. Apologize for a little bit of my technical difficulties tonight, and thanks for fighting through them and listening to us nonetheless. We can be reached at Delphi Brackets on Twitter. Send us your thoughts, send us your comments. We'll try to address them either in the show or in the bracket. If you want to look at our website, we have the videos archived. We also have all of the brackets available for you to look at. That is delphibracketology.weebly.com. Use that as your resource. But in the next 2 weeks, we're going to see if our team makes the tournament, who they're playing, and where they're playing. Until then, this is Brian Tonsoni for Daniel Jake saying so long. Enjoy your week of college basketball.